All right, friends, I want to share with you some windows that I designed and printed on my resin printer. And in this video, you're going to see not the design and printing part, but, you know, I'm going to catch you up to where I rusted them and was painting them and decorating them and how I did that. But look at this window here. I mean, you already know in your toy photography just how important good-looking windows are. They need to look, look neat, clean. They need to look like the scene that they're a part of. They allow light to pass in. They allow you to light your figure from different angles. They allow you to add color, temperature, and depth to your scene. I mean, what would a diorama be without windows? I mean, they're just super critical and super important. So in this video, I want to share with you how I took 3 different windows that I designed and rusted them out and painted them out and, kind of just made them look appropriate for the scene that they were going to go in, which leads me to another point that this video has a few different components to it because it kind of morphed into different ideas as I was doing the video. So anyway, here's another style of window that I did. It's more like a louvered, vented, industrial sort of slat window. And you can find these types of windows just by, going on Google and typing in abandoned industrial windows, and all kinds of different styles are going to come up. And then you can just find one in there like I did and just, make your models, look like the ones that come up on Google. But at any rate, let's get going and I'll share with you how I painted these. All right, let's get up to speed on where I'm at with some of these. Some of these I painted or I started painting already. This one in the upper left corner, all that is, that's a model in my slicer of how the window is on my build plate. And it's a 2 by 4 inch window, and it's supposed to represent a window like those old iron windows in the factories with the metal metal sash in the middle. And the sash is all the cross members in there that make up each individual pane. But here you can see the water spots are really hard on this, and I let that dry overnight. And what I want to do here first is I want to take those water spots and feather them out just a little bit. Now that this piece is dried overnight, I can get an idea of what it really is going to look like. And so I just want to take a wet sponge with some tweezers because my fingers are kind of chunky, and dip the excess off on a towel. Then I take it and I don't drag it across there, but I wet it, and then I dab my way across, breaking up the hard edges of the rusted pigments that I put on there, and just to take the way that the water stain, that it dried enough to stain behind. I just want to soften that up and feather it out a bit so it looks a little bit better like that right there. See, I think that looks really cool, man. Looks a little more believable with the staining. There's no real hard edges on there. It's kind of feathered out and it goes across the entire louver there, and it just looks really nice. So let's get on to the next one. So here, I had this window, and it's about a 5.5 by 3 wide, 1/2 inch deep. I didn't like the color that I started off with, which was that yellow. I don't know what I was thinking. So I switched to this Vallejo brown, and man, if you've never used these paints, they really go down and give excellent coverage. I mean, it's like painting with butter, but I mean, it's just really nice. But anyway, so I go ahead and cover all the paint that I painted previously so that it doesn't show, and that includes in between each part of the sash there. Another thing, when I first get these and I wash them and cure them, I'll hit them with a black or a white spray can primer before I actually lay down any paint on them. I'll do a black or a flat black or a flat white primer, and then I'll go ahead and paint them with my acrylics. Now, that this brown has dried, we're going to start into the part where we do the rusting of it. And I have used this technique quite a few times. I sure did not invent it. I learned it from another channel, and I've been using it for a while. I love it. It's just liquid latex, and you could do the same, pretty much the same if you wanted with Elmer's glue, but here we're using liquid latex, and I'm going to paint it onto the frame in light coats. I don't want big globs or big balls of it on there. I just want to spread it through really nice and thin so that it dries quickly, and then because we're going to end up adding paint, we're going to paint over the top of this. And the trick here is to give it a base coat, then you put your latex, then you give it a top coat, and then you'll see what happens after that. We'll rub it away and we'll reveal the base coat. You'll see, it's pretty cool. Here is a Vallejo opaque model acrylic paint white. And once again, these things are really cool. I bought them because I wanted to airbrush with them, but I learned that that they really need to be reduced down quite a bit to airbrush with, and I should have brought the airbrush ones. But when you're, when you don't think it through and you're impulsive, like I am not, then sometimes you buy the wrong stuff. But it actually ended up not being the wrong stuff because I really like these paints a lot. So we'll go through and we'll cover up this entire framework, which is called the sash, inside the window frame with the white, and just make sure. Part of the deal here is you got to make sure you get it from every angle, because you never know when you're photographing if you're going to photograph from down low or up high, and then you're going to see parts of that you didn't paint if you don't get in between each bit of the sash and all the different panes in there. So you want to make sure you get all of it, and it's kind of time consuming, but it really does end up being great looking. You can really see how smooth this paint goes down. All right, so now that we've got the white paint on there and everything has dried, make sure it dries. I used a heat gun to help speed up that process. Not that it takes a long time to dry, because these are just thin coats of acrylic paint, but you don't want to move on before the latex has dried and before the paint is dried. And then I just took a little piece of an abrasive pad, cut it, put it in the tweezers, and I'm rubbing away the white paint and revealing the brown paint below it. And it just helps it look like there's paint peeling. If you've ever been in those old factories or old school buildings or whatever, they've got those big metal frame windows, and they're usually white, and there's rust on them, and they got the chicken wire glass inside there. I don't know what you call it, but that's what I'm trying to go for here. And now that we've got it peeled away, we're off to a good start, but you don't want to leave it looking white, because it just looks too new. So it just looks like somebody gave it a bad paint job. So I get out some of the black pigments from Vallejo also. And I seem to be using these Vallejos a lot. I really like them. But they're just like super, super handy. So what I do is I'll dip my brush in some water. And the reason I dip it in the water is because when I put this powder on, I'm going to kind of want it to stick to areas of the metal framework inside the window, the sash. And so by first putting a little water on there, it helps that, keep it from all just falling down into the paper towel behind it and wasting my pigment. So you can either dab this on with a sponge, or, I'm just using a paintbrush here because I'm just going to, put it in the pigment anyway. So there's no point to do a sponge first and then pick up a paintbrush. So that's what we'll do. Now that it's wet, I'll go ahead and get my pigments on there. There we go. And this is all just however you want. For me, it's just, I just randomly get lost in my own little world, and I just go ahead and put it all on there. And it's looking really good, except that it looks a bit, I don't know what the word is. It doesn't have the pattern that I'm after. So I'll take a sponge, and then I'll just knock it back, lightly tap, and it breaks up the pigments that I put down there and gives the black a different pattern on the white. Remember, the whole goal here is I'm just trying to knock back the white so it doesn't look so bright. And by dabbing that sponge on there, see, it left a pattern behind in the black pigment that really helped knock the white back, and it didn't look so overpoweringly black and splotchy. And so that really helped too. So here's another color in the rust set from Vallejo that they give you these different, I'll try to remember to link them in the video description down below, but they give you different colors of rust pigment, because some rust is darker, some rust is newer and it's lighter and more yellow, some is more goldish looking kind of, color. So here we're going with the darker of the rust pigments, and I'm just putting it where the intersections of the metal would be, and wherever I think rust might, accumulate on an old industrial steel window, steel iron. And that's what I'm doing. I'm just going through, and I'll dip it in the water, and then I'll dip it in the pigment, then I'll put it on there. And you can also, like I just did, dip it and then pick up some of the pigment and put it on the window, and it becomes kind of cakey, kind of like a bit of a bit of, not, I don't want to say a dough, but it's really cakey. And then you can knock it back down with water from another brush, and it just spreads it out and leaves a little bit of clumpiness here and there, and it looks really cool too. It's just so many ways that you can do it with these pigments. Look at that. I mean, from a gray printed piece of resin to a window that looks pretty dang cool, man. I think that's a great looking window, and that was the first window in the pictures that I showed you in the beginning of the video. I mean, this here is another product. This is not by Vallejo, it's by AK Terrains. It's a griming, streaking, griming, kind of sludgy looking fluid. and this helps. Now there's a, you can do this also with washes. You can create acrylic washes, and it's a little more time consuming, but this here definitely has its advantage, and this mineral spirits that you have to buy also. And just pick you a good brush, and don't go overboard with this, because it's easy to do. When I first got it, I'm like, oh, let's just grime it all up. No, it's just, you'll see here, we just put it in the overall shape that I want the grime to be in. And then once that dries, I'll hit it with that mineral spirits, and you'll see I'll begin to spread that shape out with the mineral spirits. That thins out the enamel, because this is like an enamel product. And so that mineral spirits just allows you to work the spots that you laid down already and move it and push it and pull it around to get a different shape out of it, and different, different shape out of it. And here, you saw me dab it off on the towel too, and that's important, because this stuff will take all the paint off your product. If you put too much of it on that brush and you go to move it around like I am, you will be moving around every bit of paint on there. You will be mad. So it only takes a tiny bit of this stuff, man. Small little movements. I'm spreading out this original dab of grime. I'm spreading it out into something that I think would look realistic to me. It's just tiny little movements with this stuff. I used to be in some ways like a bull in a china closet. Just grime it all up, stipple everything, cover it all in rust. but it's more to it than that. Look at this. I mean, that's a combination of the rust powders, water, washes, and this streaking grime. I mean, it looks really cool. This is a great product, and I mean, I certainly recommend it. I use it. I think it's great. Now, here is the pickle. So I have these windows. What am I going to do with them? I don't want to build something right now, but I have this one dial panel that just really could use some windows. It's just a boring gray dial panel. So let's cut out a hole. Look how awesome this fits in there. Bloop. Push that rascal right down in there. Now, I will say that, the hole doesn't have to be so beautifully sanded and stuff inside. You need to knock it down fairly flush, but I'm going to end up putting another product inside there anyway, that so it doesn't matter if it's totally smooth. Now, you need your window hole to be, cut nice and clean, but, don't worry about the pink foam showing through. And I tapped on it so that you could see that it was tight. I mean, those fit in there really nice and tight and clean. So same thing, I need to put a hole in the other side of this dial panel for this vented, slatted, louvered, whatever you want to call it, window. And I'm going to cut the hole there and go to town and knock that bad boy out and put that one in. So one really great thing about windows like this is they're printed so clean and they're so rigid and strong that once you cut your hole, and these are 1/2 inch deep, 1/2 inch thick, and the foam is 1 inch, they really go in there and leave just 1/4 inch on each side and just make a really nice fitting window. This is what I'm talking about. This is AK Terrains grime, concrete. And I'm just going to go into my pink hole there, and I'm going to put this concrete texture in there and just brush it all on. You can add a little water to this if you want to thin it down. It's not a problem. This is pretty good stuff too, man. I really like it. It dries really hard. So I go through and I cover all the window holes, and once it dries and I put the window back in, and I go on the outside and I fill in all the little nooks and crannies like it was sheetrock mud or something, and I wet it down with a brush and I'll feather it out, and now we've got an old diode panel kind of refreshed with a couple new windows. And I mean, it just ends up changing this panel into something that, I'm happier to be using, and I can use it more often. And so windows are a great way to, like I say, do that. If you've got an old panel that is just boring, man, put a window in that thing. Put a hole in it. So here what we're going to do, you might be thinking, oh man, I just spent hours on making this panel and I wish it looked a little better. And now I got to cut it and put a hole in it and try to make it, but man, just get it done. It's only a hole in a window. So we're going to stipple around and kind of blend this in, and kind of blend in where I put that patch. And it's cool because it adds a texture. And if you ever look at buildings, concrete buildings, you can see where they, there's different textures and patches of different color and newer and older concrete where stuff is broken and they've repaired. So there's all kinds of different textures in a industrial building. And so here, like I say, I'm using some gray mixed with water, and I'm just stippling it on and around, and I'm going to feather the edges out a little bit so it's not so dark, and feather that out a bit with a lighter gray even more once I stipple all that out. But I mean, this is kind of just, like I say, it's really refreshed the way that this panel looks. And I had these windows and they were just what was I gonna do with them? I needed to, this is a faster way than building a whole new panel just to put these windows in, and the end result is I'm happy with it for sure. And also I wanted to say that these windows, for the people who have 3D printers and want some really cool files to print, some STL files, I have this package available. Either if you follow me on Instagram, you can click on my link tree, or if you already know my website, you can go directly to my website, insightfulimagery.com, and just click on the STL file page, and then you can download the files. I think it's a pack of 4 windows that I have. These 2 here, and then 2 others that you don't see. So now underneath this louvered window, I wanted to create some water staining, some drippy, grimy, stain. And so I have to be careful. You can always go darker, but it's really tough to lighten it up once you get it on there. So we start out really, really light, and even that looks dark, but it does dry, and it dries lighter. One of the things that I'm after here too is, if you look at the edge of the water line, you can see a real hard edge on there. And to me, it wouldn't look realistic leaving it that way. And so I want to, once I go in and fill it with the different colors that I want to use, I'll go in and I'll break up the edges of that water line to feather it out also. And I'll show you a product that I use for that. You could use water too. But this other airbrush thinner that I use from Vallejo is really helpful in helping feather those edges out and reduce it down. See, look at that ugly line. It's just an ugly shape. And so we're going to use this airbrush thinner from Vallejo. And it just takes a little bit, just like that mineral spirit. It just takes a little bit, man. Don't go knocking all the paint off your piece. I'll dab it in there once I find the right brush. I'll dab it in there, and then I'll knock a little bit of the excess off. And I'll just go over it a little bit at a time on the edges. If you use this product, don't keep wiping and brushing because it's going to remove the paint from your piece. And so look here, I'll just go on the edges, and I'll just break those hard edges up so that I get a softer, grimy, more of a stain. And it doesn't look so much like whatever shape that is. I just want to break it up. And so this helps me do that. And there's quite a few different little products available for you to rust out and grime out and stuff like that. And you can come up with your own stuff too. I come up with my own stuff sometimes, but sometimes it's really nice to just be able to open a jar and pull out a product is made to do just what you're trying to do. It makes it easy. But man, I really think this panel is definitely transformed into something that I'm you know, more willing to take it off the shelf and photograph with it now. And that's the power of a window, man. Really cool windows, man. Just you can crop in tight with your figure. You know, you can pull back with a wider lens. I mean, with windows, there's so many different possibilities for lighting and color temp and drama, night or day. They allow you to look through the window, and you might put, you know, some other dial panel further back there in the distance, so it's like you're looking from inside outside. And I mean, it's a great way to add depth. So is what I'm trying to say in so many words. But you know, like and subscribe, folks, if you haven't done so already. I really appreciate everybody's interaction and enthusiasm and all the interaction that I get. Follow me on the different platforms, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. I have stuff on Etsy. I have my website. You know, I'm out here doing this and having a great time doing it, and you know, helping folks along the way, and making friends and just being a part of this community. It's a great time. And till the next video, I appreciate it. Take care.